All right, it says we're started. Happy New Year, everyone. Welcome to MacAdmin Monthly, January 2024. And January 2024 means I've been doing this for about 13 or some odd years.
Wow.
And it's time for me to kind of hand the reins over to someone else. So I'll be joining every month and paying attention, but I won't be hosting any longer. So I want to introduce you to Gillen Birch. So he's going to take it from here.
Cool. Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, this is great to be with you guys. And I'm excited to, honestly, it's a great topic to kick off with InTune. So I'm super excited to have guests. And yeah, so a little bit about me. I work at Block, formerly Square, in the CPE space, and live in Brooklyn, so part of the East Coast contingency. And that's actually what brought me to this community, because I was looking for more peers in the area since I moved here. And yeah, so this is fantastic to be here. And my coworker Nindy is here as well. Just a quick shout out. Yeah, awesome. So I guess to kick things off, I'll hand it over to Ben if you want to go over what you're talking about today.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, guys. I'll go ahead and just get my screen shared.
Perfect.
I promise we don't have. It's not gonna be death by slides.
Just by thousands, right?
Just a few. Can you see my screen? Okay.
Yeah, looks great.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, hey everyone. My name's Benjamin Flam. Ben is perfectly fine. I am a product manager on the Apple MDM team at InTune, within Microsoft, of course, and based in Atlanta, Georgia. So most of our team is based in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Actually, I'm just the outsider. About my journey at Microsoft, I've been here for almost 5 years. I started out actually as it was called a Premier Field Engineer before for InTune, but Microsoft, we go through tons of name changes all the time, so I'm sure it's called something else. And so I focus mostly on our admin configuration. So anything that admins can configure on the device across all Apple platforms, not just Mac, I generally own. So this is things like settings, so like with settings catalog, software updates, BPP apps, commands, etc. And I also have Arnab from my team. I'll hand it over to him to introduce himself and talk about our macOS strategy.
Everyone, my name is Arnab Biswas. I'm a senior product manager in the InTune team. My specific responsibility is driving our Mac management strategy forward in InTune. So yeah, thank you for the opportunity to share our Mac story with this esteemed group. So really happy to be here. And yeah, I mean, we'll talk about all the good stuff that's happening, but I really want to start by acknowledging that, yes, our Mac solution sucked. And we, actively told customers that we could do the bare minimum, but for anything more, you needed a partner solution. And really we were not asking to be, adopted and purchased at that point. But we have been trying to change hearts and minds and really invest in our Mac story in InTune for the past few years. And what we have been hearing loud and clear is that it is too complex to have one set of tools for Windows and mobility and another set of tools for Mac. And that kind of IT overhead and it has been costly for customers, and I think the decision makers are really trying to come up with really lean IT and security organizations, and also find vulnerabilities quickly, which means that you really need well-integrated systems across the board. And of course, with remote and hybrid work now as the reality and really standard in many organizations, there's a ton of focus for letting employees choose the tech they will do their best job in, and all the Gen Zs, coming to work, and they know only Mac. So it's a new reality where we like the employee choice is really paramount, and employees really need to be able to empower them with what technologies they will do their best work on. And of course, all of that needs to happen while ensuring that your company security and compliance standards are easily enforced. So what we're really hearing from customers is like, hey, they want simplification, consolidation of tools, really less handholding of end users. Just everything needs to be just very self-service, and they want to have visibility across their complete device estate. So you have no more pockets of, oh, my CEO walked in with a Mac, and I need to create an exemption. I need to be able to manage that in the same way that any information worker is their work device is managed. So all of this really meant that we had to rethink our Mac strategy and create a more compelling unified management experience, which really included Mac as a first-class citizen. And I think coming into this space, it also meant we had to think about, okay, like, as you said, like many of the customers are already using InTune for managing mobility, managing Windows devices. And so they are coming to manage Macs from that mindset of, okay, this is how I manage my Windows device. How do I bring those same kind of concept into managing Macs? So we also have to, if you're using a very Jamf-specific management, Mac-specific management tool like Jamf, those are, specialized, and you kind of know you are specialized in that space. But training a Windows admin to then learn, okay, these are the Mac concepts, and these are kind of these are the things that will translate over, and these are the things that are different. So we had to kind of think differently about how to make that happen, and we have sort of been on a journey to create that. So Ben, if you go to the next slide. So yeah, we have been on a journey to sort of create the best managed Mac experience for M365 customers, and we're not there yet. We're working on it. And what this means is we think of Intune as really the zero trust foundation in Microsoft 365 on Macs. And these are sort of the principles that drive our Mac strategy. So really believe in modern management, and what that means is first and foremost support the built-in macOS capabilities, which lets IT secure the Mac. So this means really taking advantage of the Mac hardware and the secure platform components to harden the endpoint however possible. And in this regard, I mean, yeah, Mac as a platform just gives us so much more control from an MDM and enterprise perspective that we can actually take advantage of. And of course, day zero support for new operating systems, any new device configuration and settings as they become generally available. That's Ben's department, and staying on top of platform shifts like declarative management. Like Apple is betting big on DDM, and Intune has been the first to really build out declarative device management on iOS with user enrollment, and then now we are starting to see rolling that out in macOS with our DDM software updates. And because Intune was born in the cloud, it is built with scale and resiliency in mind, so you get that built in. And of course, device compliance and conditional access are sort of the built on the foundation that I talked about. And then it is evaluating the signals from the device and to determine what should be the overall risk of the device and whether it should get access to protected resources. And so we kind of started rolling with that, but again, like we heard that one size does not fit all, and the platform alone was not meeting the more advanced or custom ID needs for many organizations. And that is why we then started building out our macOS agent for Intune, which really complements the built-in MDM capabilities. And so that was back in 2019, I believe, when we first rolled it out. And the first thing we released was basically support for scripting, because it's one way customers can do anything they want, but yeah, it was a lot of heavy lifting in terms of writing scripts. And since then, we have been investing in using the agent to really bolster the app management scenarios that Intune had. So a lot of the built-in support for DMG, complex packages that you couldn't install using the MDM install enterprise app command. And so those are sort of how we are building out our capabilities on top of the MDM platform. And in overall, our objective with the agent is that it is also a tool that can provide us trusted signals to other M365 services across the Microsoft ecosystem. So that's kind of the broad goal in the long run, where, okay, this is a trusted agent that we have on the device that we can use to really bring the benefits of the ecosystem. And of course, can't talk about Mac without talking about the lovely open source community around it. So we are very lucky to have that. And it is, I was actually amazed when I first started working in this space and learned how widely celebrated the open source area is by customers, even in the enterprise, and how widely accepted it is. And we have really embraced that, and we want customers to be able to use those tools alongside Intune if they choose to. And if it is critical enough for customers, we have worked to build that in the product. So for example, when we were looking at our complex app store, we actually considered if it would make sense to build Monkey, use Monkey as part of that, or build it separately. And so with that, next slide, please. Ben, I'm frankly forgetting what the next slide is. Okay, yes, this is where I hand it off to Ben.
Yeah, of course. So this is just the 10,000 foot view of everything that Intune's capable of. So I'm not going to talk about each feature right now. We'll dive a little bit deeper in a little bit. But I just want to showcase the breadth and depth of our capabilities, and really want to emphasize that all of these features were the direct result of customer feedback. So like Arnab was saying, we've been working really hard to release the features that you need in order to be successful, not just necessarily a parity type feature. And so we really like this slide because it shows how we're not the same Intune that we were just a few years ago. So going back to how Arnab started off, we acknowledged that we had that management gap in settings, and then also in application management too. So, but for those that haven't looked at Intune in a while, really with this slide, we're just trying to land that we've grown and we are ready to manage your Macs. And then for any of those of you that are using Intune currently, we have some exciting stuff on the way too. So really quick, I'm going to hand it back over to Arnab to cover a demo that just highlights some of these really awesome features, and then we'll dive deeper and make sure we have tons of time for questions afterwards.
All right. So I think, Ben, if you hit next, yeah, it'll start playing. So, okay, so actually pause it for a second. So I'll just kind of frame what's happening. So here's a brand new Mac. You have shipped it to your end user, and they it's an ADE Mac, so you have shipped it to the end user, and they're unpacking it, unboxing it, turning it on for the first time. So yeah, let's go through what's happening. So device is powered on, connected to the network. It detects that it is an ADE device. And here we have configured the device using passwordless MFA. So this is a single user device doing modern authentication with passwordless MFA. Is it playing? Looks like it's paused.
Sorry.
No worries. Okay, there you go. So as it goes through that, then the device is going to initiate enrollment with Intune. What's happening here is the device is going through managed device attestation to confirm device identity. And once confirmed, the Mac basically binds the enrollment certificate to secure enclave where it cannot be then lifted from. And then the first device check-in with Intune begins. So this is where we're using await final configuration to hold the device until all our organizational policies have applied and the user has completed the setup system screens. And so this is kind of simplifying the onboarding for the user and giving IT the peace of mind that the device is secured before the user can start doing any stuff on the device or accessing any company data. So, so yeah, this takes a second to finish. And none of this is made faster. This is in real time as it's happening. So yeah, here you see the user's local account creation is happening, which gets pre-populated through MDM with the Entra ID details. The user needs to set up a local password still and continue. And you can now enforce disk encryption within Setup Assistant on 14 and above. And yeah, it actually is much faster than having to do it later on. And once that happens, so yeah, as the user lands on the desktop, they are prompted to register the device. So this is your Entra joining the Mac, which will sync the Entra ID password with the local account. So the user enters their current local password. Give it a few seconds. Yeah, so this is where they have to enter the password that they're going to update the local password to, so your cloud password. And that will complete the sync. And on 14 and above, you get a nice confirmation saying, yes, your password is updated. And meanwhile, all the other required apps should be finishing installing and setting up via Intune. So here you see Microsoft Defender for Endpoint has gotten installed and activated without really requiring any user action. So you are good to go. Now, from user's point of view, they just want to be productive, so they can launch Outlook to begin their work. And here, Outlook is utilizing single sign-on to sign them in. And in the background, it's also running a compliance check to before granting access to emails. So I call this our ultimate Mac onboarding demo, which really I think is a really powerful demo that brings together all the work we have put together in the last couple of years to streamline and simplify our Mac onboarding. Yeah, so I mean, onboarding is a critical area that we looked at, and we really thought that we will have a lot of impactful features here that could unblock customers to start moving over, and then we can start putting our efforts in other areas. So this actually shows a lot of the work that will be coming out soon. that will enable you to take advantage of all of this. All right, Ben.
Thanks, Arnav. All right, so apologies, this isn't my prettiest slide, but I just wanted to capture all of the latest and greatest features that we've released in each of these areas of the device lifecycle. So Arnav briefly mentioned it earlier, but we've completely re-architected how we handle settings. So long story short, it used to take up to 2+ months for us to just support one single setting if Apple released it. And we've automated that entire process to now when a new setting gets added by Apple, it's just a matter of minutes for us to ingest it and test it and then get it into our service release cycle. So what happens is we get notified of a change in Apple's, one of my new favorite places to go, Apple's awesome new MDM GitHub repo. So like I said, we approve it, we test it, and then our goal is just to get it in your hands as quickly as possible. So this past day 0, we actually had the settings out while the OSs were still in beta. So we definitely see the value in this and how we can start applying this to other areas. So we started to do this for commands as well. So we started with the manage settings command. And so you can see all of the, I think used to be maybe device defaults, but you can see all of that also in the settings catalog. And so those are, if you're not familiar, those are all the settings that are under the manage settings command or the settings command that look and behave like a normal restriction setting, almost like enable, disable Bluetooth, for example. But the most exciting part about this new infrastructure for us is that this is also the flow for new declarative device management configurations. So like Arnav was saying earlier, Apple has really invested a lot into this new protocol. And we also were in the same boat. We know that DDM is the future for us as well. And there's a ton of scenarios that that we feel like we can solve with it. So as far as public roadmap, nothing too much to share in the settings space. A small upcoming change is we've updated that UI in the settings catalog for managed software updates to be an actual month and date like calendar picker instead of it being a string text entry box, which totally understand how frustrating that was. I had to figure it out at first to see that it was actually a time zone offset causing the issue. So yeah, like I said, nothing else to publicly share, but we're heavily invested in DDM, so keep an eye on our documentation for any new features. So I'm just going to pause there for any questions related to config. Do you guys see any?
I guess I sort of am curious a little bit about the merging of the two worlds that you guys had between the different OS platforms, and have you found any kind of unique challenges in using the same management screens, the same panes of glass for configuring the different OS policies?
That's a good question. There are definitely some areas where, so back, I'll just take a step back to my time, like when I was a field engineer, and I was going and educating customers on this is how you set things up. And there would be some small thing like a remote action was grayed out or something, and I'm like, this seems so easy to fix. This is such a simple thing to fix. And so what I've noticed now on the engineering side is that it becomes difficult, maybe not necessarily iOS and macOS, but because me and Arnav and our team, we only own specific areas within Apple. There's a lot of horizontals that are at play. So a lot of things like making sure that a device action that's maybe named for Windows behaves in a way that it should for Apple can be a little challenging at times. But I think that's the biggest one that sticks out to me. Arnab, I don't know if you have any examples.
Yeah, one thing that comes to mind, I think we have overcome this, not a current challenge, but like setting names, where I think previously we didn't quite strictly follow what Apple called a setting, and we tried to abstract that away and like called it something, gave it an InTune name, which might be more tied to the Windows world or not tied to any really. So it's like not clear to anybody. I think we are doing better there now that we are actually like calling it what Apple calls. We're feeding it from Apple's repo directly. And this really makes it a lot easier to, even when people need help, we can just tell them, hey, go look at Apple's documentation. So I think it's again like offloading something that we would have otherwise had to manage in the past.
Yeah, no, that was kind of what I was thinking. Like, it is such a challenge, I think. Any cross-platform experience, there's so many cultural elements that play, I feel like.
I mean, even the simplest thing like, file vault versus what's the encryption on Windows? BitLocker. Yeah, it's like people get confused. Like, okay, what do you mean by encryption? Like, what is it? Like, how do I do BitLocker on Mac? So yeah, we really have to think of that. Like, okay, yeah, I live in my Mac world, and in our Apple team, like we think about the Apple concepts, but the people who are actually trying to use our technology have to deal with all the different platforms. So like, how do we make it simple for them? Like, it needs to be specific enough for the platform, but still like the concepts need to be like broad enough that they can easily apply to all the platforms.
And I guess if I can ask another question, and if everyone feel free to pop questions in the Slack. I'm keeping an eye on that too. But I was going to say, what is the integration like with the sort of backend Microsoft Graph API? Is it sort of like one-to-one support, or are there kind of like unique endpoints planned for macOS?
My understanding is that everything's pretty much the same. I feel like the only time we'll run into issues, or maybe customers will run into issues, is when we have specific calls need to be made with specific device IDs, and so you can't necessarily batch calls very easily. But as far as settings go, everything that you see in the settings catalog, it's pretty much one-to-one in Graph too.
Cool.
Oh, really quick, I see Henry asked about recovery lock. So recovery lock isn't supported. That's one of those things that we're exploring if we could have this in our new architecture, but it's not currently there.
Thanks.
Of course. Cool. Definitely feel free to keep posting questions. So yeah, for onboarding, Arnab showed you that really cool demo that highlights a lot of where we've been spending a lot of our time this past year. So we're super excited about Platform SSO, and definitely can't speak highly enough of all the collaboration and determination among all the different teams, us, Apple, and Entra ID as well. So that is in private preview right now. The public preview is coming soon, along with the ability to manage primary accounts, primary local accounts, like we saw in the demo, and also configuring devices to await final config and setup assistant. Yeah, were there any specific questions around onboarding? Or anything you want to add, Arnab?
I guess the missing piece there that any Windows person would ask, I think, is we don't have the password management yet, but our long-term objective is to try and bring the Labs integration into the Mac experience as well. But that is something we do not have we're still exploring how to do that. And yeah, that's where our mind is at. And yeah, we'll show it when we can.
When you say password integration, you're talking about setting the device password on initial enrollment, or?
Yes. So with the first screen where you saw the local account needs to be created, today we are populating the user name, and we can stop the user from editing that. But the password still needs to be created. I mean, Platform SSO really has made that a lot easier. That's kind of like a temporary password, because it's going to go away once you finish setting up Platform SSO. But it still needs to be created.
So
for the user.
Did I understand this correctly, that you want to insert somehow the password that is the principal user that just signed in with Entra, and then you already provide the password, or how should that work? Because my understanding of Labs is there's an additional admin account, and that gets rotated, and this is a bit more hidden and than the, let's say, the primary account of that device. But I don't know. Could you clarify this a little bit?
Yeah. So I was thinking more about how can we use Labs to set the initial password as well, so that can be managed by the admin, because today that is one control that we leave with the end user. But yeah, there's a separate need for, I want to have an admin account for just other maintenance purposes or recovery purposes, which also will be made easy with Platform SSO, because once the device is Entra joined with Platform SSO enabled, that means any user in the organization can sign in to the device. So you do not need the pre-created accounts to be set up at provisioning time. As long as the device is Entra joined, the admin can log in with their organization credentials directly.
Cool. So I was just reading Nindy's question in the chat. So, how MDM vendors manage their Macs? Do we work closely with client platform engineering, equivalent team within Microsoft? Internal feedback make its way into product by the way of dogfooding Intune. So, how we at Microsoft manage our Macs?
Yeah, just some insight into that, if you can. Yeah.
Yeah. So Arnav might have more insight on this, but we do have our own central IT that is, we will have more like preview type dog food experiences. But because it's such a large device estate, it's still kind of scoped down to opting into it as well. But yeah, we definitely eat our own dog food. And a lot of our experiences too, or a lot of feedback too, will come even from, like leadership devices, like asking, what's going on with this extra authentication, or, I've completely bricked my device. What's happening? So we definitely get a lot of feedback internally too. But Arnav, I don't know if you want to add anything.
When everybody gets the new iPhone, that's the week you want to take off.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so Intune, I mean, Microsoft does manage most of our devices in Intune. I say most because I think GitHub and LinkedIn are still managed independently, and I think we are figuring out some how to kind of delegate the management authorities there. But yeah, our goal is to always be within the same management system. And so that actually makes it interesting, because any Mac feature we roll out, we usually have a chance to roll that out internally and eat our own dog food. And and often in a large organization that can pose its own challenges. It's that is how it is done at Microsoft.
Cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, just more curious more than anything. Sorry, I cut you off.
No, you're okay. Yeah, for the last section, just to make sure we have it all covered. And I know Arnab's also covered this, but yeah, we've heard the feedback on the just standard MDM stack not necessarily being able to meet every need that there is. So we recently, a few months ago, GA DMGs, and then also added PKG agent-based deployments too, along with configuring pre and post install scripts. Some huge feedback that came out of that was that I think the limit on app size for uploads was 2 gigabytes, and so very soon we're increasing that to 8 gigabytes. And then for roadmap, finally, just to wrap it up, we want to finish out the app lifecycle for adding available app assignments for those agent-based apps too. But there is one more slide I'm going to share.
Oh, hang on, before you move on, I just thought of something. Yeah, so apps is probably the area that I have spent most of my time in. So it's if you have been trying into dipping your toes, I would highly encourage you to try now, because I think apps really has come a long way. When I first started, we still were requiring our awful Mac wrapping tool that was highly limiting. So one of my goals was to get rid of that and be able to parse the application in the browser itself as it was being uploaded. So yeah, I was told it was impossible to do in a Windows backend where everything is running on Azure, but one smart intern figured it out. And since it has made it to production, and we were able to deprecate our wrapper, so now you no longer even need a Mac to deploy applications for Mac. So that was another win for admins who may not have a Mac but need to manage Macs. So yeah, we really have we try and listen and really target the problems that are holding up customers from making their deployments at a large scale. And in apps, we literally took what are the applications that you need deployment? Like we made sure that we were testing those against the solution we were developing, and really made sure those can be deployed. And again, now that people could start deploying, 2 gigs was too little. You cannot deploy any Adobe application, maybe other than the reader. So yeah, now we're expanding that to 8 so that you can actually deploy real apps. Thankfully, Xcode, which is more than 8, can now be deployed by VPP. So I'll get to 8 and then see who complains. We'll see. And so yeah, the next milestone here really is supporting available apps. So we started with required because we thought that getting your security apps, VPN, those were really the most critical things. So we wanted to unblock that first for any kind of provisioning scenarios. Now that that's out, now we want to focus on, if I want to curate a bunch of apps, make them available to my end users, how do we do that? So that is what we are currently focused on, and I think that will really make it much more a solution anybody can adopt and deploy any kind of apps you need. So yeah, if you haven't tried, please do, and give us feedback.
That's great.
Cool. Thanks, Arnab. So for my last slide, just want to clear the air about our new community in Viva Engage. So if you haven't heard of it, basically from an admin perspective, we got feedback that there was a need for space where admins that were managing Macs using Intune and M365, they needed that space to be able to, share their knowledge and to learn from each other. And so we wanted to provide that. But from an engineering perspective, we have team members plugged into communities like Slack, MacAdmins, social media platforms, obviously directly with our customers. And so we use all of these signals in our product development. And we use these signals for everything from, building the case for a new feature and, getting early design feedback, like we were talking about, to things like getting bugs resolved quickly. So this isn't meant to be a competing community, just another signal that our team uses. I do highly recommend joining too if you haven't already. It's extremely active, and it has the best part too is it has other Microsoft teams plugged in as well outside of our team being Apple MDM. So Defender's there, Office is there, Entra ID's there, and everyone's actively monitoring it. So, and there's also opportunities to join previews too.
My perhaps favorite feature of this community is, when I reach out to somebody outside my org, within Microsoft, who maybe has no reason to listen to me. When a customer complains, I can tag them and like, hey, remember I told you so? Like, customer is complaining, you better do something about it. So, and we have actually launched a bunch of our preview programs through there. So I think now that it is a little bigger since we started in the last 6 months, I think a lot of teams have learned about it, and they're also starting to launch many of their Mac previews. So I think MDE, Edge, we have launched a few of our own Intune ones, like remote help through there as well. So yeah, I highly encourage you to join. We do have a bit of a long SLA to join because of how the joining works. It's not as simple as us approving it. We have a bulk add process that runs, and it's also part of our Microsoft IT. So there are certain rules and limitations there. But from all that is needed is really an M365 email to join, and I think it also requires that your own IT organization for that M365 account has enabled Viva Engage, or formerly Yammer. So yeah, if you haven't joined yet, we encourage you to join, and yeah, that's it. I think that's our last slide, right?
Yeah.
I'll ask the pointed question too. As far as MacAdmin communities go, what presence do you guys have in the current MacAdmin community Slack? Just for those of us who might not know, myself included. Where can we reach you?
Yeah, so I'm a member. I am not super active, to be honest. I'm pretty bad about my community engagement, as far as like social media platforms and things. That's where support knows how to find me too, is on Twitter, and I get tagged. But yeah, so I think I can start by saying that the best way to reach us is probably through this MacAdmins community. But like I was saying before too, there's team members of ours, like if you're familiar with like Mark and Neil, not to throw their names out there, but I think that they're a little bit more active, and we work with them all the time. They're awesome. So yeah.
Cool. Yeah, it looks like there's a pretty actively subscribed InTune channel in the current MacAdmin Slack. So,
Cool.
Okay. Well, here's a question. Henry asked about larger orgs with segregated business units. Any thoughts on? Yeah, I don't know if you want to clarify.
Gotcha. So Arnav can keep me honest here, but I think this is what we would call maybe like a mega tenant.
Yeah.
And so I don't think that there's anything that we can publicly share, but we do work with some really large, really what's the word I'm looking for? Federated customers that have been driving some initiatives on our side. And so that's probably the most recent change, is that, you know, we're investigating this. You know, these discussions are happening. But today, currently, I believe most of this is just handled through RBAC. But correct me if I'm wrong, Arnav.
No, I think, yeah, you said it right. We have been hearing this more and more from, I think, many government organizations and also educational institutions that are public education that are usually distributed across many schools or organizations that need their own independent control. I know it is being looked at as a horizontal. So yeah, that is outside our Apple InTune team. But that is kind of the extent of my knowledge on it.
Yeah, just to add on to that too, like we were talking about before, there's a lot of horizontals, and so we own Apple specific scenarios, but things like this, there's entire other teams dedicated to solving these problems too. Just to throw that out there.
Yeah, and kind of like even in the Apple space, I think we are trailblazing in many ways, like with the settings ingestion that that Ben was talking about, and also just even the enter join experience that I showed, and I guess we didn't talk about compliance, but like just I think there are a lot of experiences that we are sort of starting with iOS, macOS. So like we are thinking about the platform, but we are also looking at ways, okay, how do we, you know, take this goodness and really try to make that cross-platform? And that is something you will see more and more, you know, across the team. So in general, our job is, okay, how can we make sure that concepts that we build on a single platform can also apply to all Apple platforms? And then, you know, beyond that, we are looking at how can we take that and make it really consistent across the board. So yeah, it's a interesting interplay between like, okay, what we know about the platform and what maybe our horizontal team knows about our architecture, and how do we kind of marry the two. But yeah, it's an uphill battle when, you know, fighting the big InTune infrastructure and, you know, trying to improve it for the next sort of generation. But yeah, things are moving in the right direction slowly.
So yeah, Ben, you mentioned that on the topic of, you know, DDM, that there were a lot of scenarios that you were excited to look at, that you think there's opportunities to solve. I don't know if you want to elaborate on that, but I'm kind of curious what you're most excited about.
Yeah, I guess I don't want to spoil too much.
What you can share, yeah.
But I guess, yeah, going back to what I said earlier, how, you know, we're also bought into DDM being the future. There's a lot of functionality just in the like fundamentals of DDM that for me personally, working on like the admin configuration space, I feel like really highlights like the power of DDM. So simple things just like our like 8-hour check-in interval that everyone loves. That's like a super quick, easy one. And then, but it's also, for me, it's interesting. I'm not saying that we're doing this or not, but it's interesting for things like compliance, where it might be more valuable to have, like real-time compliance, and you're not just waiting for a device check-in. And so I think that having a lot of that more like real-time on-device management will really solve a lot of these problems. And so like software updates is the perfect example. I loved shipping that. I had so much fun like testing it out after, just the year before we had just shipped MDM, like command-based software updates. And so when I started testing out the DDM, like the declarative software updates, I was so excited. I was like, this is such a much better experience. Like, especially if, InTune is going to do this on my device, this is what I want. So I think the world is our oyster with DDM.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, because I won't name any names, but the MDM solution that I'm currently using just took away the feature to push individual macOS updates, and they told us it was a bug. So we'll see. But yeah, it's definitely an area that there's a lot of room for improvement, I think, across the board in MDMs.
Definitely.
Well, we have some time left. If anyone has any other questions, open up the floor. I know I had a question about the password syncing, because is the current architecture, because I haven't tested this at all, is the current architecture one that continually keeps your password in sync after that initial enrollment is done? Because I mean, SSO on macOS is a hot topic.
Yeah. So yeah. Oh my God, SSO has come such a long way with the enterprise SSO extension. So yeah. So platform SSO is the demo that we showed you, and that basically takes advantage of the SSO extension that Apple kind of supported, and then identity providers are free to go build. So our Entra ID counterpart has built the SSO extension, which basically supported apps and websites. SSO for apps and websites first. And so now we are kind of adding the layer of bringing your Entra ID password to also sync with the local account. And I believe technically the SSO extension still deals in tokens, so your password is never actually sent over the network. But it is whenever the user is signing in on the device, it's usually checking in with the Entra ID service to see whether your password changed since the last time it was synced. So, and if it has not changed, it basically is able to get the new tokens and use that to do any kind of sign-in transaction. And if it has, then you're prompted to enter your new password. And but I think Apple has designed it in a nice way where like you still don't get into a situation where you might be on an airplane and you have changed your password and you get locked out of your device. So your old password should continue to work until you again are back on the network. So that's how it will work. And so I know we talked only about the password-based authentication method, but Platform SSO also has another way of doing basically passwordless authentication across apps and websites. So if you choose secure enclave as the authentication method that does not touch your local password, so whatever local account password you create, that remains. But for any apps and services that's using Entra ID, you are then using your secure enclave generated passkeys to do the authentication, so that there's no password required. So yeah, that's actually in a way that's like a great first step, because you join and you're done. There's no entering your local account password and then entering your Entra ID password, and then that gets saved in secure enclave. It's super smooth, and then you don't need the password again. But yeah, you're still stuck with your local account password. So I think in enterprise, we expect a lot of customers will want to use password as the authentication method, since that's where we have seen a lot of asks in the past.
So we have a question from Arek about how challenging is it to square the differences in the platforms? Like Windows Hello won't let the local PC password be the same as your cloud password, but Platform SSO has the opposite approach. Also, we can, that's a private chat at the moment.
Yeah, it's maybe I think it makes it a little easier when there are dedicated teams. So Windows kind of is the giant organization that goes and builds their experiences. I think where I try to draw parallels is like when I talk about or when we as an organization talk about Platform SSO and the Touch ID authentication, it's basically hardware bound authentication, just like Windows Hello for Business is. So from a security perspective, it's kind of at the same level, but I think technically they are achieved in different ways. So yeah, I think this is where it's like we have to remember what is consistent and what bar we need to hold for enterprises, while at the same time respect and kind of let the platform flourish. Yeah, some of it is kind of education and also just knowing what the concepts in InTune are, which we need to do.
Cool. Any final questions for our experts? Cool. Well, if not, it was a fantastic presentation. Thank you so much for bringing slides and answering all of our questions.
Thank you so much for having us. This, really, really great to be a part of this and be able to share what we're doing on Mac.
Yeah, it's great. Also, like fantastic timing for me also, because selfishly, like we're starting to investigate MDM solutions. InTune hasn't been on the list, so it's great.
You know who to talk to now.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Well, I guess just to sort of wrap things up, quick shout out to some other upcoming MacAdmin events. I think let me correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the next big meetup is in the UK, the MacAD UK in May, end of May, and then followed by Mac DevOps and YVR in June. Does anyone know of anything before that? Yeah. Also, yeah, so we have our own meetup, which will be in February. So stay tuned in the Slack. We'll vote on some topics. Yeah, that wraps it up for today. Thanks everybody for joining. Also on the stream.
All right. Thanks everyone.
Thanks everyone.
Bye.